Hey guys, happy Friday. I've got a literary agent podcast for you today. I have the lovely Chloe Seager on the podcast. She's from the Madeline Milburn Agency, and she is the double agent of literary agent. She is an author and a literary agent, and I think that just gives her an amazing ability to understand us as authors and kind of see things from both perspectives. So this is a really cool interview. I hope you guys learned something from her, and check out her latest book, which is called My Type on Paper, which is a really cute, romantic book, which I think sounds amazing, but she tells us a little bit about it. So let's go ahead and get to know Chloe. You're kind of like a double agent. You're a literary agent and an author, so I think that'll be even cooler to hear from your perspective.
Double agent, I like that.
Yes.
That makes me sound very exciting.
It does. I like it. Can you tell me a little bit about what drew you to publishing and being a literary agent?
Yeah, so I've always just loved books, which is obviously the standard answer for anyone working in publishing, but I guess I actually started working in publicity in book PR. So it was kind of like organising a lot of launch parties and marketing books, and that was all really, really fun. And I absolutely loved working in publicity, but I didn't actually realise that literary agenting was a job. So I think how I got started was I went to an SYP event, the Society of Young Publishers, and they had a kind of overview of all the roles in publishing on the publishing side, and out of those I thought I'd be most suited to publicity when I was 21, so I got into that. And then when I started working in it, I was like, oh, what's a literary agent? I kept hearing about these literary agents, which is funny because I feel like even working in some departments of publishing, not everyone will know what a literary agent does, because I didn't when I was working in book PR. Kind of this shadowy background figure, and yeah. So when I kind of learned what a literary agent does, it sounded like a really nice mix between editorial and publicity. And I think for me was that I wasn't so drawn to being an editor, because although I love editing, I love big picture edits. I'm not so much about the kind of the minutiae of the kind of finer details, but I wanted more involvement with the manuscripts than I guess I was getting on the publicity side, and so it was a really nice mixture of those jobs, because you're that first person who reads the book and you do give big picture edits, but you also get to be the book's champion, kind of like you're working in publicity as well. So it was just one of those jobs that I didn't know it existed, and then it kind of took me actually working in publishing to find out that it did.
And how lucky you are, because now you are one and you love it.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's one of those weird jobs as well, where like everyone's route in is probably a little bit different.
Yeah, I've asked this question, to every literary agent, and it usually always starts with, well, I loved books, and then it's a different path.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Tell us a little bit about when that love for books began for you.
I can't remember not loving books. It's funny, I've always loved reading, but I suppose I only ever considered kind of working with books later on. I guess, again, it's just one of those things where publishing feels like a very sort of mysterious industry, and you don't necessarily think of it as a real job in a weird way. Like, I do the job and I'm still like, is this a job? Is this my job? It's bizarre. So I think I actually did drama and English at uni, so I've always like loved reading, but I originally, when I was younger, wanted to act, and then the more I started getting into acting, the more I realised that I couldn't act, and that I just ended up writing the scenes for other people, and that was a thing I wanted to do more, and the kind of that side of it was always more interesting to me. And then I kind of thought, oh, actually, you know what, I've always loved books, and it's just one of those things that just because you're a reader doesn't necessarily mean you think you want to do that for a living. And then once it kind of occurred to me, I was like, oh, of course, that's the perfect job. And then it was just about kind of going out and finding out what jobs actually were in publishing.
Awesome. Well, I think, you know, I'm very similar to you. I can't remember a time when I didn't love books either. Like, it's just been, ever since I could remember, ever since I could read, I was reading. Like, I saw an old family friend a couple weeks ago camping, and I was sitting there reading a book, camping, and he's like, I see things haven't changed. Still got a book in your hand.
No, never.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it, when you've always loved reading? You're like, I can't exactly remember when it started. I mean, there are standout books from, like, being a kid and a teenager where you kind of remember them. But, yeah, always loved reading.
Yes, I have one book from when I was a teenager that is real worn and old, but I just, it's so sentimental, I don't think I could ever give it away. Even though I've, read and given away lots of other books, I think it's one that will probably stay with me for a very long time.
Which book?
It's called The Dance of Sisters. And
okay. I haven't read it.
It is, let me see if I can find it here really quick right here, in my room of books. It is by, look, I even have like property of my name in it. It's by Tracy Porter. And it's a really old, book, but it's about I used to do ballet, and I loved ballet. So it's a book about two sisters who do ballet, and one of them suffers from an eating disorder and mental health issues and really struggles with it. And I didn't really struggle with mental health when I was that age reading this book, but I have since, and it has always just stuck with me and resonated with me, and I'm surprised it has made it through all my moves.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's why I love working with children's books in particular, because I think they are the books that stay with you. Whenever I ask someone about their favourite books, it's never a book that someone read as an adult, like hardly ever sometimes. Yeah. But usually it's something you read as a kid or a teenager, and those are the books that kind of shape you and, speak to you at a certain time. So yeah, that was like another draw for me in publishing. Like, there was another thing I had to discover working in publishing, that it was actually kids' books that I was the most interested in.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, I have a little partner here, my 6-month-old.
I was going to say, are we being joined by somebody?
Yes. He's a little bit, doesn't want to be on the ground. He just wants to have me hold him.
Hello.
Yes, see, don't cry. Be nice. So my next question is about your double agent status, being a literary agent and an author. Can you tell us how being an agent has changed you as an author, and then give us like a little blurb about your latest book?
Yeah, sure. So I would say it's not so much that being an agent has changed me as an author, but that being an author has changed me as an agent.
Ooh, yeah, like that.
Maybe both, actually. I mean, I guess as an author, I'm possibly slightly, not more like relaxed. That's maybe a bad way of putting it, because I kind of know the deal, I guess. Like, I kind of know what's happening at each stage, or like I know what to expect.
Yeah.
I know what's going on, like, from the other side, I guess. Yeah, I don't know, and maybe this is a bad thing, because I'm so used to working in publishing. I think I like, not like that the magic is gone, because the magic never goes, but it's more just like I know it so well. I sometimes forget that, like, other authors will not, like, maybe conceptualize all these other things that I'm obviously just working with every day. So there's like an extended knowledge, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, for me as an agent, it definitely changes my perspective on it. Like, I think I'm just so much, I understand what people are going through, but like, especially debut authors, because I think debut author is such a weird time, and it's like the levels of anxiety that you feel about your debut book going out into the world and having it sort of, talked about by people you've never met is just this weird kind of anxiety that that all debut authors go through. And I think because I've been through it, I'm always kind of totally aware of how hard it is, because I've been through it emotionally.
Yeah. I think that
and querying as well, like querying, the hard process of querying, like I've done it, so
yeah.
I get how awful it is.
I think it just gives you an extra level of like understanding for your clients, I'm sure, to be like, okay, like this is what's going on and I know how you feel, and you're, you know, a little bit better able to see from their perspective because you've been in that seat too.
Yeah, totally. I think so. Like, you know, when people are like, I'm staring at all their Goodreads reviews and I'm like, just step away from Goodreads. It's not for you. And I know I've been there, been down the black hole.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
It.
It's not worth it at all.
No.
Well, tell us a little bit about your latest book. It's called My Type on Paper, right?
Yeah, so it was actually kind of a collaborative project with Scholastic, and it's a kind of rom-com about this girl called Maya, who I guess is just trying to figure out what her type is and what she wants from a romantic relationship, and how that actually turns out to be maybe the thing you didn't necessarily expect at the beginning. And I always think that it's always been a kind of interesting subject for me, in terms of like, I know a lot of my friends really approach relationships almost like they've got a kind of checklist, and then I know people who approach it really like it's just a feeling and I'm going out with someone who's on paper really unsuitable for me. And I guess just navigating that as a teenager when you're just starting to come to all these things for the first time was really fun to write.
Yeah, that is very fun to write, because I think that people do approach dating and relationships in very different ways, so that's exciting.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
I know I've always been the kind of person who does not think very much at all. I just kind of plunge straight in with someone that I like. So I think writing a character who was being like very thoughtful about the process was fun.
Yes, you get to step outside your comfort zone with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into query questions, because I know, querying is just the wonderful world of querying, and people love to hear the answers to these. So my first query question is, do you think queries need to stick to the specified formula? Now, that's not like your agency's submission guidelines, because those should always be followed, right? But this is more like the golden rule of, your query not being gimmicky, or trying to, break away from the typical mold of like the who, why, what stakes, and, then the info about your book.
In what way? Like, kind of...
Well,
sorry.
No, you're fine. Do you think that queries need to stick to that basic formula of just including, the who, why, what, the stakes, and, leaving a little cliffhanger, obviously? Or do you think queries can be a little bit more step outside the box and gimmicky, like some people, I think, want them to be?
Do you know, I hesitate to kind of say they can, because usually no. I mean, occasionally I've got one that's a little bit more gimmicky, and if it's done in a really fun way, then I've then it works.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I would say you're not losing anything. You're not risking being overlooked just by being like, this is what it is. This is what's at stake for the character. This is where it fits into the market. This is who I am. You are not losing a chance, because that will get you somewhere if the book is good. Like, and that query letter will move you on to the next stage. Whereas with a gimmick, although sometimes I've had them and one or two in my entire career, I've thought, oh, actually that was quite fun. Usually with the gimmick, it puts you at a disadvantage. So I would say, yeah, probably don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Even though I've seen a couple that are kind of fun.
But more often than not, it's safer just to stick with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Good. And when I say gimmicky, I mean, I just like, sometimes I've had a couple of query letters written as if they were from the character's point of view, and it's a really strong voice-led book like that. I've seen it work. But then sometimes they can just usually they could just be really confusing, and you're getting through. I mean, at the moment we normally get hundreds on the children's side every week anyway, but at the moment, especially because of the pandemic and lockdown, like we've been getting, I'll step away for a day and I'll have 100 in there. So when you're really trying to sift through those, the gimmicks can just slow you down and confuse you, and that's putting you on the back foot, I guess.
Yeah, that can maybe definitely not work in your favor. I can imagine when you're looking through so many of them that you kind of want to know, like, where to look and what to expect, and not have to, like, think too hard when you're probably like tired of looking at the computer screen.
I don't want to have to try and work it out or tease out what the book is.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to be told.
Well, that's what the query letter is supposed to tell you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, wonderful. Let's go to our next query question, which is, what is your number one query no-no?
I mean, it's similar to what we were just saying, but I think for me, my query no-no that I really hate is when people don't tell you what happens in the synopsis. Like, they leave it really vague, so it's like more like a blurb than a synopsis. I really like to know exactly what happens and how it's going to pan out, and that helps me, because often the query letters, as much as some query letters are great, often the query letters that are coming in are not as wonderful, or that people aren't as maybe trained at pitching books as we are. That's our job. So when I read someone's query letter, someone might have pitched it in exactly the right way the first time, but they might not have done. So I will look at a synopsis to find my own pitch more than I will find that in the material. So sometimes when I'm looking at a synopsis, I'm like, oh, okay, well, they might not have pitched it in this way, but I can see how I'd be pitched this book to editors. So when there's, the synopsis isn't complete, or it's just a blurb and it's not what happens, then I can't find that for myself either. So then I'm just relying on the query letter, which they may or may not have pitched in the way that I would. And finding that pitch and finding that connection with the book in that way is so important for me to do my job, I guess.
That's definitely important. And that's like a new perspective on synopses. However, on a synopsis. There we go. Because those are like the bane of my existence. And I think a lot of other writers, can't stand writing those too. But to have that perspective on it, that might even, help and work in your favor if your query isn't, top notch. Or I think querying is, obviously a very different type of writing than writing a whole novel. So that is a very good point to, making sure you have a good synopsis.
Yeah, definitely. Because often the pitch that I end up using with publishers is not the pitch that came into me. It's the pitch that I've worked out from reading the book, and often deciding whether or not to read on with the book. For me, I think maybe I work this way a little bit more than other literary agents do, but the synopsis is really important to me. Obviously, the material is the most important thing. Yeah. But kind of the synopsis and finding your pitch within it definitely is really, really helpful.
That's super good to know. My next question for you is, what things in first pages will make you stop reading?
Oh, maybe stop reading. I mean, I guess just not liking the writing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Would be the obvious one. Not connecting with voice. I think I'm quite voice driven. So, yeah, definitely if I wasn't connecting with the voice, I'd probably say, oh, this isn't for me. Because, I don't know, I think that's a really important element of a book for me.
Definitely. And a positive one. What's your favorite thing to see in a query? What gets you super excited?
What gets me excited? I mean, a unique idea gets really excited, because you see quite a lot of books which are coming into the inbox which are just quite similar. Yeah. And I think anything that kind of makes it stand out, and that anything that kind of indicates to me that the writer knows knows their market and knows how it's fitting in, but also what makes it stand out. Like, this is for fans of this book, but it's different for this reason, and this is why. I think it needs to be written. And I guess it's less of a market thing. It's more like, oh, well, this person is a big reader and they've spotted a gap in the market, and this is why they feel this book needs to be told. It's kind of like, you know, they're a big fan, but there was something missing in those books for them, so they've gone out and they've written the thing they really want to read. Like, that's exciting to me. That's not just kind of someone being like, oh, I like books and I've written this other book, which, you know, sits directly alongside these things. I guess it's really, really lovely when you think someone's been reading a lot of books but thinks, oh, well, this is missing from this area, and I can bring that to it.
I definitely think that shows that they're in tune with the market and what's going on, and that on your side as an agent, you're like, oh, this is somebody who's prepared for this business, who pays attention, and would be a good person to work with. I could see that from your side.
Yeah, and often those people are kind of, there's a reason they wrote that book, which makes them really passionate about it.
Yeah. Which is always something you want.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everyone coming into our inbox is obviously passionate about reading, but yeah, that kind of added level of, I spotted this gap and I really want to be the one to fill it, and this is why I'm the right person to fill it.
Yeah, I love that. That would be very exciting to see. So, my next question is, what are you looking for right now? What is on your manuscript wish list?
Well, at the moment, I mean, actually, I've been saying this since I started in agenting, and it's just one of those genres that people tend to write a bit less than other genres. Like, for instance, we see a lot of fantasy, but we don't see as much contemporary. I would love a contemporary romance with a really strong hook. So something obviously like So All the Boys I've Loved Before, you know, something that could be on Netflix. And I would love that, and I've kind of never found that, even though I've been agenting for about 5 years now. And I love fantasy. I love big, magical, middle grade adventure. I love spooky, although I have taken on quite a lot of spooky. This is another thing to say about agents as well, is that, like, you can have a wish list, and for instance, like, I love spooky books, but I'm probably getting quite full
Too many.
up that area of my list now because I love them so much. I've taken on so many. And I guess, I would love a kind of a YA book that feels like an episode of Black Mirror. I mean, again, I represent The Loop by Ben Oliver, which kind of does feel like that it definitely has that vibe, but I have space for something else in that area. A kind of Our World with a twist I love. Basically anything that just, it feels a bit different and makes me excited. It's so hard to say. Like, some of the things that I take on, I've never really been looking for them. They just, they drop in and I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then I start reading it and I'm like, oh, I love this place and that character. And I get really excited about it. And it's hard to be prescriptive about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess as well, like, different kinds of writers writing different kinds of stories. So I guess, like, I would love to see, submissions from diverse writers who are just writing the stories that they really want to tell, or maybe where, like, genres have gone before where there haven't been as many diverse writers in that area. Like, that's really exciting to me as well.
So lots of exciting things, but maybe not so much spooky because you're a little bit full on spooky.
But having that, because I love it so much, if something was amazing, I would still take it.
Oh yeah, I love spooky things. That's like my favorite. Well, awesome. I hope everyone who's listening, pay attention to what she just said and send her what she's looking for.
And there's kind of like a full description of what I'm looking for in the Madeline Milburn website if anyone wants to take a look.
Perfect. I have just one last question for you. I have been told it is my hardest question, but I would love to know what your favorite book is right now. This isn't your favorite book of all time because who can choose, but just a book you've read recently that you really loved.
Favorite book I've loved. You know what? Like, what I do when this question comes up is I look at my shelf to be like, oh, what have I read recently?
Yeah.
And I've just moved, so, like, none of my books are here, so I don't have the luxury. Oh my God, I mean, obviously I just read Normal People, and that's such a standard answer because everyone just read Normal People and loved it.
That is
And
fine.
it's not even a YA and children's book. Do I have to remain on brand?
No,
Do you want a kid's book?
No, you don't have to remain on brand. We all read like a little bit of everything, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I am that way too. I have my bookshelf right behind me. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's my stack of what I've just read and what I need to read. So to not have your books by you would be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. No, it's hard. I normally look at them for a visual cue.
Yes. Okay, well, I am going to do...
What about you? What's your favourite book that you've read recently?
My favorite book that I've read recently, I just read the second in the Furyborn series, called Kingsbane by Claire Legrand. And it was amazing. I read it in, like a day and a half, and it's like the biggest book in the world. And she just has just amazing world building skills, and it's a very fun fantasy that's just so compelling. You can't put it down. The third one comes out next month, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I need to pick it up.
Yeah, so good. Chloe, thank you so much for chatting with me and telling us all about yourself as a literary agent and an author, and answering some of those awesome query questions for me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure to rate and review this podcast where you're listening. If you can't rate and review where you're listening, please post about it on Twitter or Instagram and tag me at Rose Quinney, Quinny, and you will see another episode soon.